In 2008, the economy crashed. I crashed with it. I created this morning routine, didn't have a name, wasn't a book, but within 2 months of doing this very specific 6-part morning ritual, within 2 months, at the height of the Great Recession, I doubled my income and started training for an ultra marathon, which I had never done anything like that before.
Hal Elrod is on a mission to elevate the consciousness of humanity. As an international keynote speaker and author of one of the highest rated books in the world, The Miracle Morning, which has sold over 2 million copies.
The day that I was diagnosed with cancer, the worst case scenario is I die. And so my heart, liver, and lungs were all on the verge of failing when they finally figured out what it was. The only thing I can do right now is to focus 100% of my energy on the mental and emotional aspect of being at peace and focusing on healing, and then logistically do every holistic practice known to man. And he said, your oncologist wasn't exaggerating. You've got about a week to live.
You should stay in the victim mentality. I gotta stand and fight for my honor and my family. That's how I did it, cause you know that's how it had to be. So now I'm slaying dragons and I do it happily. I told them I refuse to be another casualty. I looked inside the dragon's eyes and then I told them casually, hi, I'm a dragon slayer and I got a dragon lair. I'ma go and slay a dragon, then I'm gonna drag him there. I don't care, I ain't scared. Look inside my heart and there's a lion there. Conquering my dragons, I ain't fighting fair.
So Hal Elrod, it is so good to be with you. And of course, you know, your intro just played. People know who you are. You know, when you've sold millions of books and you fly across the country and around the world and you're giving your talk and you're seen everywhere, people know. But there's always something missing in the introduction. Is there anything that you'd want to mention other than what, you know, people formally hear in your introduction?
Yeah, I think it's that, you know, the cancer journey was a big deal in terms of just how it changed my life. The biggest one was realizing that I was not living in alignment with my number one priority. And I think that this is true for a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, which is if you ask a room of entrepreneurs, hey, you know, raise your hand if you have a family, and the hands go up, you know, raise your hand if your family is your number one priority, and all the hands go back up. And then you say, hey, raise your hand again if I were to look at your schedule, that it would be totally obvious to me that your family is your number one priority, and almost none of the hands go back up. And so point being, I just realized that I thought my family was my top priority, but I wasn't living in alignment with that. And the cancer, that experience made me realize, you know, I got limited time with these people and on my time on earth. And so it was a real shift in so that my schedule would align with that priority.
Yeah, you know, Hal, one of the things that I think that makes your message resonate with so many people is that, you know, and I think we first met, I don't know what it must be. You're 44 right now, so it would have been maybe 25 years ago.
Yeah,
something
that's
like
when I
that.
started selling Cutco. Yeah,
yeah, you started selling Cutco, and I was in the organization then too. And you know, we kind of went our separate ways. And I was just telling you before, for the audience sake, before we got on the show, I said, so you know, I knew Hal was the sharp guy. I knew that you had a book that came out, and then I was just so busy in my own life and building my business that I wasn't paying much attention. And at Best Version Media, somebody came up to me and said, hey, you know what, our next guest speaker should be Hal Elrod. And I said, Hal, were you in Cutco? Is that how you know him?
Yeah, the Cutco guy?
They said, no, it had nothing to do with Cutco. And they went on to talk about where your career had gone. And I looked it up and I was like, oh my goodness, this guy really has done fantastic in life. And I'm totally unsurprised. But I will tell you why I think that is the case.
Okay.
It is because you are so authentically who you are. There are so many people that go online and they want to influence people, mostly to become influencers. That's what the whole gig is. Let me have a master class on not how to run a business, but actually to teach you how to do the very thing that I'm doing, and then wonder why you dilute the market. But anyway, you just teach people how to be better people and how to take access or, you know, have basically some more self-agency in their life, particularly starting in the morning. But walk us through that. So, you know, you have faced death more than one time. This has shaped how you thought. Even before that, you were always, you know, kind of wise beyond your years. But walk us through where you were and what that journey has been like over the years to get to where you are right now. And in essence, if the today you were to meet the 20 years ago you, what would you say to that young guy?
All right, you might have to remind me of that that last part. So I'll start here, and this is a part of my story that I didn't start sharing until the last few years, and that's when I was 8 years old. My baby sister Amory died in front of me. She was 18 months old, and I woke up Saturday morning. My mother was screaming from her bedroom. I ran across the hall, and she was performing mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and CPR on my sister, and she died that morning. And at 8 years old, it was a lot to process. I wasn't emotionally mature enough to really feel what I was feeling. But my mom, who was of course devastated, within 6 months, my mother had founded she had started leading a support group for other parents who had lost children. And then my dad started a fundraiser to raise money for the hospital that my sister that attempted to save her life. And so what I learned is, when you experience tragedy, adversity, you've got to find a way to turn your pain into purpose. And at 8 years old, I didn't understand that was the seed being planted. But you fast forward 12 years later, when I came out of my coma after I was head on by the drunk driver, one of my first questions was like, I've always wanted to be like a motivational speaker and help people, but I wasn't sure what to talk about. And I told my dad, I said, maybe that's why this happened. Like, you and mom took your experience with Amory and you helped a lot of people because of that. Maybe that's what I'm supposed to do. And so that led, from selling Cutco to, okay, I'm going to become a coach and then an author and then a speaker and go down that path. And then in 2008, the economy crashed. I crashed with it. And I created this morning routine, didn't have a name, wasn't a book, idea. But within 2 months of doing this very specific 6-part morning ritual that I just called morning personal development in my schedule, within 2 months, at the height of the Great Recession, I doubled my income, more than doubled my income, and started training for an ultra marathon, which I had never done anything like that before. And I told my wife, sweetheart, it feels like this morning routine feels like a miracle. It has completely changed who I am, changed our lives. And she, without hesitation, she goes, "It's your miracle morning, sweetie." And, she's my muse. And then eventually it became a book. And now it's around the world with millions of people.
That is incredible. And by the way, always the best ideas come from the woman by your side. That's awesome.
That's right.
Good for you.
That's right.
And so, it's one thing to go from, experiencing this on your own, to having your wife shape the title for you. And it's a completely different thing to actually be able to help millions of people with it. What was that like? I mean, it comes with highs and lows. I mean, when you have a passion for what you want to share, there are some people who are going to hear that message and it's going to resonate right away. And they're going to say, "You go get them." And then there are other going to people that, maybe it doesn't really make the impact for them for whatever reason. How did you get through that sort of thing? How did you make your breakthrough?
Yeah, one way that question is sometimes asked is like, did you envision this from the beginning? Did you set out to change and know that your book was going to change millions of lives? And the answer is absolutely not. I'm a human being with tons of insecurities, right? I heard someone say that we're all, 14-year-olds and 40-year-old bodies or whatever, right? We had all the same insecurities we grew up with, or we overcome them. But the point is, when I was writing the book, I kept, having, like all writers do, get writer's block. And, I don't know how to communicate this in a way that's going to make any sense to the reader. And how's it going to impact them? And how am I going to convince people to become morning people when they've spent their entire lives believing that they couldn't, right? And so that was the dominating narrative. But then while I was writing the book, I would do like a little 15-minute talk at the little local event, Toastmasters on the Miracle Morning. I created an online 60-minute audio using freeconferencecall.com that got downloaded by 10,000 people over the years I was writing the book. The point is, I would get emails just when I was ready to throw in the towel and be like, "There's no way, I'm not a writer." I get an email and say, "Hey, Hal, I heard your Miracle Morning audio. I downloaded the free audio and I implemented it the last 2 weeks. And I'm coming out of depression now. I can't thank you enough." And I'm like, dude, it's not even about me. I have a responsibility to share this practice that changed my life, and it changed my coaching clients' lives, with the world. And so I just kept going and going. And my goal was to write a book in 1 year. And then it was to try it again year 2. And then and it took 3 years to do it. And when I did it, I had this idea. I thought, okay, not an idea, but just a consideration. And this is true for anybody listening, right? I went, if this thing that changed my life and it's changing some other people's lives, it could change anyone's life. And it's literal. I felt it's my responsibility. I was given this message from God, and it's my responsibility to dedicate the rest of my life, or until further notice, to sharing this with as many people as I can. And so I set out the first year, change 1 million lives, one morning at a time. That was my mission.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, that might take my whole lifetime, but I'm going to try to do it in 1 year. And I did 152 interviews on podcasts. I gave 36 speeches around the country. I launched my own podcast. I engaged on social media daily. I did everything in my power to reach 1 million people, Dave.
What year is this, Hal? Just to give.
This was 2013. So the book published on 12/12/12. December 12th, 2012. And so that first full year was, 2013. And I did everything in my power to sell 1 million copies and help 1 million people. And I fell short by 987,000 copies.
But that's about the time where I would have lost contact with you, actually.
Okay.
So that's the interesting thing. And then somebody reminded me of where you'd been in life. It was a few years ago that I had heard. So there was probably, a 10-year gap or something like that. So, okay. So fantastic. Continue with the story then.
So, I live by this thing I call the miracle equation, which I created as a Cutco rep. It was a talk I used to give on, how to sell or reach goals you never thought possible. And basically the crux of that formula is you have to maintain unwavering faith in yourself, in God, in your abilities, wherever you put that faith that you can do the thing you're setting out to do. And you have to put forth extraordinary effort, and you have to make those two decisions inevitably until you get there for however long that takes. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the year, I'm like, man, I'm not even close, but I go, and I did the math, by the way, Dave, and I'm like, it's going to take me 76.7 years to sell 1 million copies at this rate, at which time I'll be 110 years old. I was like, man, that is discouraging, but I have a responsibility. It's not about me. And so I tried year 2. I sold like 20,000 copies that year, upped it a bit. And long story short, 6 years later, we surpassed 1 million copies, and now it's over, 3 or 4 million copies. But I love it. Really goes back to that whole 10-year overnight success thing. It takes 10 years to become an overnight success. And I think most people, in fact, I've shared that story at a lot of author conferences, and I've had so many authors approach me and go, man, if I would have kept marketing my book for 6 consecutive years, I can't imagine where it would have been. But, it trailed off in the first year, and I didn't sell many copies. And, and so I switched gears and wrote another book, or I did something else. And, just for all of us in our goals, if you commit to one thing that you put all your heart and soul in for, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, anything is possible.
It's funny because I also mentioned this earlier to Pat Lencioni. If you look at the best-selling books, he's the only guy on there that's got like 4 every single week in the top 50. Nobody else does. Yeah. And he's not a massive social media guy. He has a good following, and he's charismatic, but there's a combination of two things. He's very good at marketing his material, and like you, he's got great material. I mean, that's really the bottom line. If you market garbage, nobody wants it. But if you market something that's great, that people like, they're going to tell their neighbor about, that's useful in their life, that changes something and makes them better. Yeah. They're going to want to talk about it, and you've done that. So you also, let me just, I'll put suggestions out there, and you can edit them. Okay. An observation that I've made about you is that you're a person that not only gives advice, but you follow your advice. And in fact, that's how you came up with the Miracle Morning. You did this, and then you shared it. You're not the person who says, hey, how to make 7 figures that never made more than $10,000 that live in your mom's basement. Yeah. You went out and you made a difference. You affected your life, and you marketed that. But you have continued to be a student of that. Now you go from all of this to facing one of the greatest challenges that you've ever faced before. It's your second look at the possibility of death. And your life is completely different when this happens. You're not 19 anymore. Let's walk through where you were, how that came about. How did you grow? What were the new things that you learned? But what were the things you fell back on that made you have to follow your own advice?
Yeah, so this was in 2016, October. I struggled to breathe one night, went to the ER. They misdiagnosed me on and on and on, a week or two of tests and having my lung drained of fluid repeatedly. I was diagnosed with a very rare aggressive form of cancer, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, and it's one that it shuts your organs down. And so my heart, liver, and lungs were all on the verge of failing when they finally figured out what it was. And I'm not a big fan of just big pharma. I didn't want to do chemotherapy. I told my doctor, I said, hey, I want to treat this naturally and holistically and let my body heal itself, and he said, you don't have that luxury. This is a cancer that you've got about a week to live, son. Your organs are shutting down. And my wife is sitting there with me, squeezing my hand, till I almost broke it. And and I just said, I wasn't real trusting. I'm like, all right, you're trying to scare me into chemo. I get it. I didn't say that, but that's what I was thinking. And so I said, give me 24 hours to do a little research. And I went on, I immediately started like Googling and figuring out are there holistic oncologists? And I found a couple of the best in the country. And so I reached out to one and he said, he actually cured Suzanne Summers. His name is Dr. Brzezinski. And he said, you don't have, your oncologist wasn't exaggerating. You've got about a week to live based on what you told me. Your best bet is chemo. I was like, oh man. So the hard part about this was, you said my life was different. I was 37 years old. I had a 7-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old son. And of course married. My wife's age is unknown to this day, but I've got 2 kids now. And right. I was a kid, 19 when I had the first thing happen. And so, the day that I was diagnosed with cancer, I immediately applied this thing that I learned in Cutco training called the 5-minute rule, which says it's okay to be negative when things go wrong and feel your emotions, but don't dwell on things you can't change for an extended period of time. Focus all of your energy on what you can change. And so I was taught to set my timer for 5 minutes, give myself 5 minutes to feel whatever's coming up. I'm upset, I'm sad, I'm angry. And with the cancer, I did that. And I was like, okay, this is scary. Like the worst case scenario is I die and I leave my kid. And the odds are 80% that I'm going to die. It was only a 20% survival rate, and leave my kids without a dad. I'm like, oh man, that's, I can't even imagine that. And I go, okay, but I can't change the unchangeable. The only thing I can do right now is to focus 100% of my energy on the mental and emotional aspect of being at peace and focusing on healing. And then logistically do every holistic practice known to man in conjunction with chemo to detox my liver, build my immune system and boost my body, right? Heal myself. And I'm not leaving it up to the doctors. Like I'm taking 100% responsibility for my healing journey, and the doctors are just team members. They're just helping me out, right? But it's on me. And so, and then I applied my Miracle Morning. That was within the first few days. I realized I need to focus all 6 of the Miracle Morning practices off of all these other goals I've been working on all year, selling 1 million books and making X amount of dollars and this and that. And 100% of my Miracle Morning is going to be focused on beating cancer. The meditations, the affirmations, the visualization, the exercise, the books I was reading, the journaling, all of it, I focused all of it on one objective: to beat cancer. And in 2008, by the way, all 6 practices were focused on doubling my income, and they worked. And so I had confidence that, okay, I created a miracle before with this. I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to do it with cancer. And so that was it, man. It was scary. And if we have time to unpack it, I'm happy to share my affirmations formula that I teach in the book, but that I used to beat cancer. Because in the beginning I was all optimistic, but when you do chemo, like, if you're sick, if you got the flu, every negative thought you have surfaces, right? You're like, oh my God, my income right now, or my this or my that, right? Or my marriage, or like you just, when you feel like crap, you think like crap. And so when I would do chemo, I would go from being like, I'm going to beat this, I got this, I'm going to live to be 100 with my family, to what if I die? Like, what if I die? And I have a responsibility as a father to actually get my affairs in order and prepare for dying. I'm like, that's a really weird cycle, right? Like conflicting focus. Like, all right, I'm going to beat this, to wait, I've got to prepare everything for death. Like, because if that happens, and it's possible, I got to be a realist, I got to make sure everything's in order. And I was thinking I got to record videos for the kids, all that, and while I'm feeling sick. So the point is, my Miracle Morning and my affirmation specifically anchored me to my unwavering commitment to beat cancer, why it was a must for me, and which specific actions and practices that I was committed to implement, whether I felt like it or not, to ensure that result. And that's kind of the formula in a nutshell, right? Number 1, step 1, affirm what you're committed to. Number 2, affirm why it's a must for you. And number 3, affirm which actions you'll take and when. And I applied that affirmation to cancer. And so even when I was exhausted and sick and whatever, it was like, it doesn't matter. I'm going to do the things I committed to do, whether I feel like it or not just for myself, but for my wife and for my 2 kids. And I'll do anything for them. So I'm doing it,
Yeah, that's an amazing thing. I mean, there is so much there to unpack. People who get angry are usually more calm long term. The people who are like, you know, they go punch a bag, they swear, they say something, they get it out, are generally speaking more stable. Although if they have no virtue there, they can be too explosive, right? You have to have some control. But basically, it's this acute opportunity of negativity, which opens the door up to long-term positivity. And then the second one was, like, if you are sick and you take Tylenol to reduce the fever, you do feel better, but you will stay sick longer. And if you just let your body go to a spike, level, it heals faster. And so I kind of put together this whole idea of, you know, give yourself a certain amount of time. Some people just like be positive all the time. I was like, no, forget that, if you want. So, but anyway, that's the smallest part of your story. The bigger part of the story is the very fact that you were able to take this entire 6, idea affirmation lesson that you built and that you put into practice and that you mastered. See, this is the key thing about this. And then that you remastered again. But in the midst of this crazy dichotomy of planning for the possibility of death, but having the hope for the future. One of my great friends, Kevin O'Brien, he always says, you always plan for the worst and you act and hope toward the best. Yeah. And you seem to have done that. But my question is this, though. What about those around you and how they impacted you? You seem to have, through that process, been the one to calm the others and to bring the strength to the circumstance, as opposed to having so many people do that to you. I would imagine they looked at you kind of fatalistically, like, this is the last time I'm going to see you, Hal. And you were the one who was like, no, we're going to beat this. How did that go? And how did it play with your mind? And how did you get through that?
Yeah, that's interesting. I've heard my dad and I have shared the stage at different events where he'll, be with me, and I'll bring him up, and the audience will be really curious to ask him questions. And he does talk about how, Hal's positivity led us through it. Like, we were scared, but we were like, well, he's optimistic, so that was part of it. But for sure, without the support of my family and friends and my wife, and, in fact, without my wife and kids, I wouldn't have made it, because I literally lived for them. There were times where I was so sick and I'm like, I just don't want to, I was in so much pain. I mean, procedures that went wrong, they injected chemo in my nerve on accident versus my spine. They missed it. And I had 11 days of horrific migraines round the clock, like, anyway. So, like, and during that, I was like, I don't want to live, but I made a commitment for the people I love. And so I have to, I have to keep pushing through it, and I think that, there's often been said, we'll do more for other people than for ourselves, whether that's in the context of hiring a personal trainer or having an accountability partner, right? Or because, like, when you commit to do something, like I always tell people when I do the affirmations formula, number 1, what are you committed to? Number 2, why is it a must for you? I say, think about the people in your life that commitment's going to affect. So for me, during the cancer journey, during that, it was, I'm committed to beat cancer no matter what. There's no other option. Now, the why it's a must, I had 5 reasons. And I'm going to share these because this will give you a real life example to apply to your own goals, where you have reasons that are so important to you. They're so compelling that when you review them every day, you're like, oh yeah, I'm in, I'm committed. You might start the day going, I don't feel like it today, I'm not motivated. And then you read, oh yeah, I'm doing it for my wife, I'm doing it for this person. For me, it was, number 1, I'm committed to beating cancer for Ursula because I promised her forever and a day. Number 2, I'm committed to beating cancer for Sophia and Halston because they need their daddy's love, guidance, and leadership, and I want to be a grandpa someday. Number 3, I'm committed to beating cancer for my mom and dad because they already lost a child and they don't deserve to lose another one. Number 4, I'm committed to beating cancer for myself because, damn it, I deserve to live a long, happy, healthy life too. And number 5, I'm committed to beating cancer for the millions of people who are themselves battling cancer or some other disease and may not have been blessed with the knowledge and resources that I have. And it's my responsibility to overcome this so I can help them on their journey. And those 5 reasons read every morning, and often throughout the day when I just needed a reminder. But every day, every morning, it reminded me, oh yeah, I'm committed. And so to me, the miracle morning is about putting yourself in a peak physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual state every single morning so that the best version of you, as our friend Matthew Kelly would talk about, right? That's who you begin the day in the best possible state so that you can then go win with your family, go win at work, and so on and so forth. But that affirmation was the anchor that kept me going during, one of those difficult times in my life.
So when you were going through this, of course, there was, I'm asking this as I'm going to make it as a statement, but I'm asking you were unable to work during a big portion of this. So how did you shut your mind off of just like self-pity and fixation? What did, clearly these affirmations, they're there. What I love about this is it's organized, it's deliberate, it's taking control over something, but you can't do that 24 hours a day. I mean, I would imagine, you sound, I'm a prayerful man. You sound like you're prayerful, that you would spend a lot of that, open time talking to God and asking for his help.
Yeah.
But what did you do? How are you deliberate about when a guy is as productive as you are in your personal life, in your family life? How'd you feel that? You see what I'm saying?
That was actually the silver lining. Is, when I took total responsibility for healing cancer, I also made a list. What might have caused this, or how might I have caused this? Right? What might have caused it? How might I have caused it? And I went, oh well, in my 20s, I took a bunch of workout supplements because I was vain, and they had all sorts of blue dye and all sorts of cancer causing chemicals. I loaded up on those in my 20s. Maybe that was it. I had fast food growing up. Maybe that was it. Right. And then I also went, I've been a workaholic. I worked myself, so much, and and to the point of where I go, I don't need as much sleep, right? I'll just wake up early and do my miracle morning, even though I was working last night till midnight. I'm not, I don't need sleep. And, so that was a big reason is, maybe I caused this because I worked myself, to almost to death. And so the silver lining was, all right, that's the one positive about this chemo journey is I get to go on vacation. I get a break. Like, I don't normally watch TV, but I'm just going to watch movies. I'm going to watch TV. I'm just going to, and yes, prayer. And yes, I did the miracle morning. There were still some disciplined practices each day, but there was a lot of like, I don't have to, because work, there's so much pressure from work and deadlines and people needing this and that, right? And you often don't even realize it because it's your norm. I was like, I feel like I'm floating, that I don't have to do anything. And this other silver lining is my dad, who's an executive for an oil company. He called his boss on the day I was diagnosed, said, hey, I got to fly to Houston to save to be with my son. He has cancer. I hope you'll keep my job, but I'm not coming back until he's healed. And so my dad and I got an apartment. I was 3 hours away from my home in Austin, Texas, and Houston. So I wanted my kids to have their normal life. And so my wife stayed with the kids, and she became a single mom. That was a whole nother thing. But my dad and I got an apartment. So I was like, how cool is this? In no other universe would me at age 37 get to live with my dad for almost a year without any responsibility. Because, and for me, and just to be clear, if anybody's like, this is coming up, my books, I had the Miracle Morning by word of mouth alone was selling more than enough copies to pay all of my bills. And so that was an extraordinary, I talk a lot about that now, like, hey, you need multiple streams of income. You need passive income because you never know when something like this could happen. And so.
Wow. You came out of that. It's crazy. You had to have, because all good people do. And you're self-admitting that you grew through that process. But man, you're just like you were when I knew you when you're like you're smarter and you're more experienced. You've gone through more, you're raising kids, you're a husband. But for just the audience, you are the same guy that you were. You are so authentically you. You're energetic, you're likable, you're positive. You could be in a room with 10 people who would see something from the downside, and you would, literally people go, I have to live with my dad. I'm away from my family. I'm suffering from cancer. And you turn that into, hey, no responsibility with dad for a year. Wow, this is cool. That's an amazing gift. You clearly had great parents, which reminds you to be a great parent, which is fantastic. So I asked you a question that we didn't get a chance to go through, and I've kind of set it up this way, talking about how you were like the same guy when you were young. But in your wisdom today, if you went back to the Hal Elrod a week before you got in your car accident and you said, Hal, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to tell you a little about life.
Yeah.
What would you say to yourself?
Yeah. I think I would say something that I was actually probably better at when I was younger, and it's been harder and harder as I get older and the world gets crazier and life gets more complex, right? Which happens as you have a family and then a business and then, and then you're aging and then people, are aging and dying, and right. Life gets, it goes from being relatively simple to relatively complex. And I think for me, it would be enjoy every moment. Like life's gonna, and this is the same thing I would tell anybody, watching or listening. Like, we've been blessed with this one life, and I believe heaven is earth. Heaven on earth exists, and it's a state of mind. And we rob ourselves of that by just thinking, creating all sorts of negative thoughts that cause us to experience a lot of unnecessary emotional pain and turmoil. And so it's really self-suffering that we're unknowingly creating. And yeah, I think it's like, hey, life's going to be really challenging. There's going to be ups and there's going to be downs. But when you get to the end, I think that you're going to look back and be like, how much of it did I enjoy? Not how much of it was perfect from the outside looking in. How much of it did I enjoy? And so like when I had cancer, anybody listening, there's a Miracle Morning documentary, and it's a 90-minute full-length documentary. 60 minutes in, I'm diagnosed with cancer. And I called our filmmaker, Nick Conadera, who's a friend of mine. And I said, hey, Nick, the movie's on hold, dude. You'll never believe this. I have this really rare, aggressive form of leukemia. I'm in the hospital. I'm starting chemo today. And I only have a 20 to 30% chance of surviving, although I'm going to beat this. But the movie's on hold. And, we talked for a while. And then he said, Hal, this is the movie now. Like, we were filming you changing millions of lives with this Miracle Morning movement that, and he said, and now you're the main, like you have cancer now. Like I hope it's, I don't mean to offend you, but I got to come film you, and I'm going to film you beating cancer. And based on what I had just shared with him, he goes, you have the mind, like this mindset that you're approaching cancer with, this is going to inspire millions more people in a different way. And I was like, let me talk to my wife. We didn't think about having cameras during this whole experience. It's a pretty intimate experience. And, but thank goodness he did, because like when you're watching the movie, you don't know if I'm going to live or die. And I mean, I had faith, but I had no idea. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, my point being, in that film, you see, I'm going through the toughest time in my life, but I'm like, I'm going to enjoy every moment of this. Yeah. I'm going to enjoy even the painful moments, because it's part of life. It's all, and we all know the most difficult moments in our life are typically where we have the opportunity to learn, grow, evolve, become better. So why not be grateful in the midst of the painful moment, as opposed to requiring hindsight in the future to go, oh man, I actually grew a lot during that time, and I had a lot to be grateful for, but I missed it because I was creating all sorts of suffering, and I was wishing I wasn't going through what I was going through, as opposed to just embracing it and enjoying life.
Yeah, it's fantastic. If you aren't enjoying something, you can't help others enjoy life. I mean, it's very simple that you're gonna pull people into the state of mind that you're in. Yeah. And if you make a decision to make the world a better place, you're going to start right there in your house with your family. You're going to exude joy there so that it spills out past that. So a couple of different questions I have for you. I want to turn this a little bit to health, because a lot of our audience is very interested in that sort of thing. Yeah. What have you learned? And I don't know if you can necessarily say, hey, I know what caused the cancer, but what, you clearly take your physical health and your mental health seriously. Are there certain life hacks that you have? I recently have gone through some of these myself, but I've not suffered with what you've suffered from. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot there. And I'll start with this. So I thought I ate healthy before I got cancer. In fact, I had at least one friend that said, man, I thought when I found out you had cancer, Hal, I was like, I'm screwed, because Hal's the healthiest person I know. And so that I gave off that impression, and I believed that I was the healthiest person. But here's what I've learned. It's not about necessarily, I mean, definitely eating healthy is crucial, but it's about what you don't put in your body, right? Meaning, I had this narrative that, because I eat organic salads, for breakfast, and or organic smoothie for breakfast, organic salad for lunch, and then for dinner, I only have either a vegan dish or a wild caught salmon or grass-fed beef or pasture-raised chicken. Like I'm impeccable with those things. Okay, what else were you putting in your body, Hal? I was on Adderall because I had ADHD, so I was taking a methamphetamine every day. But at that time, I'm like, no, I'm healthy. I'm healthy. I eat healthy. Everyone knows I'm healthy. I'm healthy, right? That was my narrative. And so it was the belief that I had. And so what else were you putting in your body, Hal, that might not have been good? Well, I was drinking a beer every night because I would get a headache from the Adderall, and then I would take aspirin for the Adderall, and I had to have a beer to kind of like take the edge off every night. But there's only one beer. You right? Okay. What else were you putting in your body? Right? Oh, I was having vegan ice cream, but it was vegan. Right. So here's the whole point is that it's not just about eating healthy. That's crucial, obviously. And that's the place to start before you eliminate all the things that you eat that are unhealthy. If you're not eating healthy at all, yeah, you got to start there. But you have to be so brutally honest, and it should be in writing. In fact, one of your miracle mornings, use the scribing, 5 minutes of scribing at the end of your savers, scribing, writing, and journal. What's everything I put into my body, over the course of the day and the week? And that's it is if you're super healthy, but you're a crackhead, you're going to have health problems because of that, right? If you're super healthy, but you smoke or you drink our margaritas every night, that's going to affect your health.
I'm looking at my producer. Do you know why I'm looking at you right now? Because we literally talked about this. We've been recording all day. And one of our shows was exactly that. I said, it does not matter. And we were talking not just about physical health, but we were talking about, just behaviors in life. It doesn't matter what kind of great things you're doing. At some point, the vice that you have is going to be like if you ate perfectly healthy and you worked out every day, but you just had a little spoonful of poison.
Yeah, that's it.
At some point, that's going to overtake everything else. So I went through a weird little journey here too. Like I was a fighter for many years. I don't know if you remember that, but I've had.
Oh yeah, martial arts. Yeah.
Yeah. So shoulders and knees and everything else. And I was like in such pain, I had to get my hip replaced. And I was told, I went to the doctor and he goes, "Hey man, I got some bad news for you. You've got the shoulder of an 85-year-old. And I was like, I mean, you mean that like a metaphor, right? And he goes, no, when 85-year-olds come in, your shoulder's way worse. He goes, but that's not the worst part. The worst part is your hip is even worse than that. Well, the pain grew. I couldn't tie my shoe, whatever. So I go to the surgeon because every night the pain was an 8. During the day it was a 3 or 4, but it was like just grimacing pain. And I just needed to get out of the pain. I couldn't do anything really physically, on my feet, play sports or anything. Yeah. And I just at the last minute I said, "Is there anything that I can possibly do to try to rehab it? I mean, am I gonna hurt it if I rehab it?" And he goes, "It'll hurt, but you can't hurt it." And I have osteoarthritis. I mean, it's like right there and it shows up. So I said, "Okay, I'm gonna try something. Just give me a little break." At the same time, this Dr. Shauna Mara calls me, who's probably the most prominent doctor by way of natural health, really. I mean, he was a lawyer before he was a doctor. He was a doctor for Bush and Cheney, and he studied 7,000 patients. Anyway, he's not a carnivore, but he's close to it because he also advocates fermented foods and then a lot of fasting. So I change a couple of physical things. There's some physical therapy things that I think are very real there, maybe 55% of it. And then 45% of it was completely changing my diet. The point is now I have 0 pain in my hip and I'm sprinting.
Wow.
And
so you went to a carnivore diet or a mostly carnivore diet?
Yeah, I eat, I'll eat 3 or 4, 5 pounds of meat in one meal. And ribeye is my love language. But then I'll have crazy 7 or 8 different fermented foods as like a garnish with that. But he scanned my body. And he was like, on the outside, you look a little like Mark Wahlberg, but on the inside, you look like Chris Farley. And he even went on to say, stop the cardiovascular distance stuff that you're doing, like biking, because that causes visceral fat. And every single cancer and everything else is associated with visceral fat. Basically, the point is it radically changed my view of this. And all probably, 600 comments on the interview that we did with him are people saying, I went on this diet and it totally changed. Anyway, I was a skeptic at the time that I interviewed him because he wasn't my physician and I only been on the diet for a couple of weeks, but I really became a believer in that. And you're piercing me too on this too, because it's like, okay, you do all that good stuff, but really is that bottle of whiskey, what's that going to really do? And he's big time on, you got to get rid of all that, and it's it's a fantastic view. So you learn a lot and you share a lot with people. Yeah. All right. Next question. You are an entrepreneur, and your story is one that influences a lot of people from that perspective. And you provide that advice, have the second stream of income, the third stream of income. What advice do you give to, like, our audience? We define him as like, his name is Matt. We've got a pretty broad audience here. But
your avatar?
Pick one person. Yeah, our avatar is Matt. He's maybe 32 years old. He's got 3 kids. Okay. He's starting to do the writing on the wall, and he's saying, I'm not going to be able to pay for college and retire if I go at this pace. I've got to do something more. Should I be an entrepreneur? How do I have a second stream of income? What is your advice to Matt? Because you probably get this quite often when you're coaching people.
Yeah, I haven't coached people for a long time, but no, I mean, it just, in general, this is a question that comes up. And I think that the number one thing is to decide, I need to create a second stream of income. I don't love the burn the boats analogy when people that are working for a company or employed want to start, become entrepreneurs. And I have a friend, we have a mutual friend, I won't say who it is, but he did that. He was like, he burned the boats and he went, he's like, I have to do it. And he did save a little bit of money to transition, I think, but essentially it became really stressful because he didn't build the business as fast as he was hoping for and didn't generate income, which typically for most of us, it takes longer than we anticipate. And then it was a very stressful way to do it. And so to me,
we have many mutual friends.
Yeah.
And a handful with that same story, without saying the name, though, I am almost positive that I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. And he's built a very successsul business, but it was a really stressful transition because he really he's like, I quit. I quit. I'm doing it. And what I did is my last year selling Cutco, I was going for my best year ever, and my goal was to also write my first book. That's a whole other story. It was like, how could I achieve every goal I have this year? And one of them is I need to create a replacement income for sales. And the way that I started is asking what I was qualified to do. And again, for your avatar, right? I would say, like, what am I qualified to do? And at that time I went, well, what have I done? I go, okay, well, I went through that car accident. I overcame it. So I could, I definitely could speak on that, or I'm writing a book on that. Okay, there's that. Getting your speaking career off the ground, that's probably going to take, some time. I don't know. And then I thought, man, the other thing I've done is I've sold a lot of Cutco. I'm a Hall of Fame Cutco rep. And I bet other Cutco reps would pay me to coach them, right? I have a name recognition in the company. And so I reached out to, probably maybe 10 of my colleagues. And I said, hey, as this is my last year with Cutco, I'm transitioning into coaching, yada, yada, yada. I did a little Googling. What does a coach charge? At $500 a month is the average. Okay, great. I said, so I'll give you a deal for the first 6 months. I'll charge you half price, only $250 a month. Anyway, long story short, when I left Cutco, when I finished my last year, I saved money to help also with that transition, but I also had a new business started and a new stream of income that was growing and had momentum. And so, to me, I think that is it, is you make a goal. It becomes its own goal. Create a second stream of income, right? Mm-hmm. And again, to me, it's just the responsible thing to do if you're Matt with 3 kids, because we don't know if we're going to lose our job or the industry, right? We've got to have more. I think we have to have more than one income stream. And so that's it. It's just create the second one and then transition when it makes sense. Then you jump from one boat to the next, as opposed to burning your boat, swimming to the shore, hoping you have the supplies to build another boat would be the analogy that I'd use there.
See, what you said was so brilliant, though. You said, what am I qualified to do? See, most people today are told, follow your dream, follow your passion. Now, you might be qualified in your dream or passion, in which case, really cool. That's awesome. Yeah. But a lot of people have a passion for something they're not very good at, actually.
Sure.
Or it's something that really can't produce income.
Can't monetize it,
yeah. The happiest people out there are people who do something they're competent in. And so I always tell people, listen, you can follow your passion, sure, but there's no guaranteed success there. If you bring your passion into what you do, you will have success. No matter what it is, you're going to find some enjoyment in it. That's fantastic. Okay, so let's talk about what's the future for Hal Elrod. What are the projects that you have going right now? I know that your book just came out again in December. It was upgraded. What's the difference between the original version and the one that came out just recently with Bambella?
So it's significantly, well, I could say it's the same and it's significantly different. So there are 70 pages of brand new content. So there's that. And including 2 brand new chapters, The Miracle Evening, which is your strategy for blissful bedtime and better sleep. So it's a nighttime ritual. And then the last chapter in the book is The Miracle Life, which I call your path to inner freedom. And it's how to get to that place where you are free to enjoy every moment, regardless of what difficulties you're facing. And then I added 25 pages of content to the middle of the book throughout and rewrote almost every page. So it's basically, in essence, I wrote the original Miracle Morning 12 years ago, right? Or I published it. I started writing it 15 years ago, published it 12 years ago. And ever since then, I've gone, oh man, if I could rewrite that book, I would say this so much differently, and I would teach this differently, and I would answer this question that people have had over the last 10 years. So rewrote the book, and the new edition, came out in December. And then a big focus moving forward. I mean,
Which,
there's a lot.
I would imagine a lot of that was just like what you learned when you went through the experience they went through.
The Miracle Life is really based on my cancer journey and what I learned from that and reference learnings from before that. But the biggest thing is, so there's two facets to what the changes were. One, it's how my practice has evolved over the years, right? And what I've learned from that, which a lot of that ironically is don't stray too far from the basics. That's when I've actually had lost the Miracle Morning mojo, when I'm like, I'm too far away from like the essence of what this practice is about. I've gotten too far off on my affirmations and whatever, or meditations. That's one piece of it, but a big piece of it is we've received, I don't know, upwards of 10,000 or more questions from readers over the last decade plus. So it's like, oh, wow, and also even reviews, but it's like, oh, I should have answered that, or that part's confusing. I can see that a lot of people don't understand how to do this. Or I'm reading 1, 2, and 3-star reviews on Amazon, which thankfully there's not too many of, but there's enough, right, to go, oh, wow, there's some common themes here of things that didn't land with people. Man, if only I could rewrite that book. And so now I got to finally, pull it apart and rewrite every page.
Oh, that's awesome. It must have felt great to get that done.
Yeah.
So, all right. And now you have an edition coming out for seniors.
Yeah. So there's a dozen books in the Miracle Morning.
How old is a senior to you?
What'd you say?
How old is a senior to you?
Yeah, actually, I let my co-author determine that. He is he owns one of the largest senior living facilities in America. It's called Aegis Living. Okay. But I asked him, what are we defining as a senior here? And he said, really, these principles apply to anybody over 55.
I object. Oh, hey. I don't object. I turn 55 tomorrow. That's why I'm saying that.
Get out of here.
Yeah. So
thankfully, when the book comes out in May of 2025, you'll be able to read it and apply it.
Yeah, I don't need to read an old fogey book right now at my young age.
That's right.
Tomorrow I might be interested in it.
One of the big things, the Miracle Morning app we came out with last year, and that's been the most requested, a mobile app, because what people have said is, Hal, we need a Miracle Morning app because I use 6 apps for my Miracle Morning. I have a journaling app and a meditation app and an affirmations app and a visualization app and a Kindle to read. And then I've got my exercise 7-minute workout app, right? Do it all in one. And so the idea of like trying to create 6 apps in one, it took us years to develop it. But anyway, that's out now. And there's a free version with a ton of features and then a premium version that's really affordable. And that way, I always say, like, miraclemorning.com is the hub for everything. You can watch the movie for free. You can download the app for free. And if you order the book on Amazon or whatever, while you're waiting for it, you can watch the movie, start with the app, and then really, it'll increase the odds that you're going to follow through with what you read.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so you're a day in the life of now. Are you getting on the road? Are you mostly doing things virtual? How are you handling things?
So we live 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, I don't know, time flies, roughly 2 to 3 years ago, my wife and I decided to move out of the city in Austin, Texas, out of a little neighborhood onto a 32-acre ranch out here, like 30 minutes outside of Austin. And nice. So We literally, I always say my wife is the rancher, I'm the financier, because I'm still in the house most often. But we have like 60 chickens right now. We have 2 sheep. We have 4 dogs, which I was never a dog. I never thought we'd have 4 dogs, 3 of which are Great Pyrenees, ginormous dogs. But we, the other day we had a meal where we had eggs for breakfast that our chicken laid. And then we had squash in our salad for lunch and tomatoes that we had grown in our garden. And then we had a wife that we had raised and that my wife had processed. We had chicken for dinner. And it was like, wow, our entire day's worth of meal. We grew on this ranch, raised on this ranch.
That's probably a pretty cool feeling. Do you have solar panels and windmills too, or
some of that, a little bit of that.
Yeah, that's very cool.
But we have horses too. My wife, she was like, hey, our neighbor's giving away free horses. Can we have them? And I'm like, they're free. I mean, yeah, I'm sure there's feed, but sure. And then the next thing she says, I'm not kidding, 3 seconds later, and sweetheart, they're going to sell us their horse trailer at such a good price. It's only $5,700. And I go, wait, how did free horses turn into, I got to write a check for $5,007 from a horse trailer that I never in my life thought I would ever need or want to own? So, yeah, man, I always joke that we're like those 80s films where like the city folk, it reminds like a Kurt Russell, Goldie Hawn type film where they move out to the farm and every day is a blunder. And that's like our life now.
Well, and the thing that's crazy about it is, kind of knowing you from the years, I am picturing you on your horse right now with your big dogs.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you, are you getting a lot of course you get many requests. It's not that, but are you turning requests down for speaking? Are you going, are you hopping on an airplane and leaving the family?
Yeah.
Are you saying I'm just doing this virtual? How are you doing that?
I took a break when the kids were younger, and the idea that when I would leave, I could see it really impact them. And now that they're, my daughter's 14, my son is 11, me going out of town a couple times a month, they get it. Dad's out working. And it's what I love of all my work, writing books, doing interviews, anything, speaking on stage that's my sweet spot. It's, I feel like it's what I'm meant to do. And so, the summer is always dry for me, and I don't know if it is for other speakers, but I don't do any marketing for speaking. Every single speaking engagement I've gotten for the last 12 years has been incoming from somebody reading the Miracle Morning book.
Yeah.
And then going, hey, you got to come teach this to my team or, whomever. So yeah, this spring was the busiest I've ever been with speeches. Last year was the busiest I'd ever been with speeches. And then this fall, we'll see if it picks back up.
And other projects. So, I love the fact that you said you stay close to the idea of the morning miracle. You don't go too far off of that. Yeah. But, it's just got to be impossible to be who you are, interacting with the number of people you are who are sharing, in essence, an anecdotal case study, which could be made scientific on all sorts of other areas of focus in their life. Are you more galvanized in saying, hey, you know what I'm learning is that more people need the miracle morning. I'm just going to really, really, really commit to making this thing to go from 3 or 4 to 10 to 20 to 50 million people. Or are you saying, boy, I'm seeing some other stuff there and I want to focus on that?
It is a great question. And it's more of the first, the miracle morning. There's nothing I've ever created in my life that I've ever seen make as profound of an impact in an individual and as widespread of an impact in terms of how universal it is, right? I mean, we were seeing all ages, from, people in their 80s and 90s do the miracle morning to kids do the miracle morning, and everything in between. And so it really is my life's work until further notice, until I get some sort of calling, if something else comes up. But what it's become is the ultimate filter on making decisions, which are, I get opportunities for affiliate deals and all sorts of stuff, all the time. And the answer is, does this, and you kind of said it, where going from 3 to 4 million to, 5, 10, 20, 50, the way that I put it is there, a few million people have had their life impacted by the miracle morning. And that means I have 8 billion people and the rest of my life to reach those people. That is how I view it. And that's an arbitrary number. That's not a vanity, or I guess it would be a vanity number because I don't think I'd ever actually reach all 8 billion people, but it's like, every day, thousands more people are discovering the miracle morning, whether it's through the movie, they watch the movie, we can see the count, or they read the book, or they download the app, right? And then keep reading reviews and emails. And so I don't see how that's going to stop, because it does keep reaching people. And I wanted to mention something else. One thing that's really exciting is we have the Miracle Morning in Schools program now. And the Miracle Morning, it's the I believe we are the #1 selling book in the education market in the state of New York. That's my understanding, at least with the biggest company. Anyway, I don't know that for sure, but I'm pretty sure that is the case. And so, but it's not just selling the books. We have Brianna Greenspan. She's bringing the Miracle Morning into schools. And like today, she's at a district school in New York, or at a district conference with educators. And she has a Miracle Morning wellness room with meditation and affirmations, and it walks them through it. She brings the practice into the schools. Schools decorate their halls with affirmations that she's created. And so it's amazing. And it is making the impact it's making, not just for the kids, but for the teachers and the administrators. The case studies that we're doing now, scientific research on different schools, how it's lowered detention by as much as 92% in a school. Once it was implemented, from 6 months later, detention's down 92%.
Wow.
Just things I could never have even imagined. So anyway, yes, it's like Miracle Morning, whether it's the app or the book or the movie or the book series or the schools program, it's finding ways to help more people with the practice.
There's an interesting practice that I have people do to help them move forward, that when you were expressing all of this, I thought, oh my goodness, you don't need help for this because you're the guy who provides the help to others. But if you were to go back to, when you gave your first Miracle Morning talk, and you were to show yourself this video, like this podcast, and you were watching this podcast and you're like, wait, what? It was in a school, detentions went down. I did what? Did he say 3.5 million copy? And you watched all of that, and you heard all of these things and the radical changes in your life, not to mention some of the scary things you would face, right? What does that look like 20 years from now? And one of the reasons I help people do that, as I say, there's some joy in your life you're experiencing right now that if somebody were to show you a picture of years ago, you wouldn't even believe it. Like, Hal, I can't imagine 20 years from now, if we had this conversation, and you're talking about the schools that it's in right now and the impact that it's making, what that story is going to sound like. I mean, it's going to be pretty awesome. And because you do such good work and you are really such an authentic, genuine guy, hey, listen, you don't need my affirmations. You have your own every single morning. But if I want to say something, it's going to be, brother, you just got to keep doing what you're doing, because you're making a difference. You're helping a lot of people.
Well, first, thank you, Dave. I really appreciate that. And that, that's coming from somebody that is, doing very similar things in each of our unique ways. But yeah, I think what I would wrap with is that if you're struggling in your life right now, and that's just part of the human experience, is we all go through adversity. If life's great right now, the truth is, there's another adversity around the corner, and it's going to be hard again at some point, right? And as much as we all want life to, once it's going good, you're like, okay, don't mess anything up. Just stay this way forever, please. I'm enjoying this. It's so nice. And then, of course, you get hit upside the head with cancer, financial challenges, whatever it is. Here's the point. Wherever you are in your life right now, consider that it's where you're supposed to be to learn what you need to learn to go where you want to go. So that's one half of what I want to share, is be at peace with where you are. And even if it's tough, go, what is this teaching me? How can I learn? How can I grow? How can I become a better version of myself so that I'm capable of creating an even better future when this adversity subsides? And the other side of that coin, if you will, is that if you're working towards something right now and you're not as far along as you want to be, I wish I was making more money. I wish I was where this person is or that person is. Why isn't it happening faster? What I've learned in hindsight is that when you finally get to the point in your life or your work or your marriage or whatever, or your self-growth that you've been working so hard for and for so long, when you finally get there, that you finally achieve the goal, you reach it, and you spent so much time feeling like you weren't moving fast enough, and you look back and you realize with hindsight that, oh, it was supposed to take exactly this long. Why did I spend so many days wishing I was further along than I was? Why couldn't I just find the joy in the exact place and time and moment and point that I was at and be grateful for all of it? Man, I missed out on so much life. And so I think, yes, wake up every day and maintain a healthy sense of urgency to keep moving forward. but make sure that you stop and you journal what you're grateful for, and you meditate, and you spend time just really going, wow, this is the best day of my life.
That's fantastic. And I got to tell you, I mean, there's not too many words more that I would say, Nico, to wrap things up compared to what Hal said there. So I'm going to keep it simple. And I'm just going to say, hey, if you like what Hal had to say and the rest of our guests, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Share this with others too. If you go to miraclemorning.com, you can become a giant and we can go slay some dragons